What's a subtle sign someone's actually really wealthy? I know a family and the dad is the CEO of this huge company. He's always traveling to Paris or Japan or somewhere for work. They're the most down-to-earth people I know. No flashy cars. Their home is a really standard small home in a subdivision. Normal clothing and shoes. The only way you'd know their wealth at all is because they do buy their kids new vehicles when they're of age to drive, nothing flashy, and they travel to some pretty exotic places. The wife is a nurse and works and is just so normal and kind. I've been to their home before and it's just a typical messy lived-in home. I lived with a girl in college who was crazy rich, Asian rich. She moved in for the company, otherwise her parents were just gonna buy her a house. She always wore this mini bag style purse when we were going out and it just looked like a small plain black bag to me. I asked to borrow it for a concert one weekend because they had a super strict bag policy that none of my other bags met. She was like, oh sure, no problem. I loved it and ended up looking it up to buy one for myself, and found out it was more than a year's salary, and she let me take it to a music festival without a second thought. Has all the time in the world. No prior commitments with other people but themselves. Does not work for someone. They know what they want. You'll realize you're the one adapting to their schedule for meetings. They don't work with laptops in a coffee shop, but with their phones always in a call telling someone else what to do. Sometimes, you'll even judge them if they're even competent as a person because they don't work, but once you talk about money with them, you'll really notice their financial intelligence. Just things I notice with wealthy clients as an architect. Their stuff clothes. I have a friend who's really wealthy but also very nice. Her clothes are not of any brand we know of, yet they have a really nice feeling when touched, something like a high-end feel that you can immediately tell it's expensive. She usually doesn't try to hide, nor brag about it and just treat it like normal clothes. The same for her other stuff like makeup products or backpacks, pens, watches. They don't stand out, but instead blend in nicely. Hard to put this into words. That's the easiest way to distinguish wealthy people, at least to me. This comment section is fanciful. People are conflating the lower upper class with the true patrician elite. Real wealth is not subtle, almost bites bend the world to your will nature. Normal, middle class people rarely if ever butt against it, so it may seem subtle or guarded or shrouded in misunderstood signifiers to them. But if they walked around Sagaponic they'd have no problem locating real wealth. Real wealth isn't a table at Noma and not looking at the bill. It's flying Rene Redzepian from Copenhagen to Dane the menu for your daughter's wedding reception. Amazing unnoticeable plastic surgery. My cousin and I met a woman who really looked like she was in her 40s and discovered she was in her late 60s. Seriously, she looked amazing. She was the same age as my aunt and we were floored when she happened to mention her age. My cousin and I compared notes afterwards, considered some of the stories she briefly mentioned, and realized she was enormously wealthy. That's when we realized that she had some very subtle plastic surgery. She wasn't attempting to look like she was in her 20s but rather aging very gracefully. Where they go for a standard meal out. Went to see a sporting event with a buddy from out of town and a bunch of his friends. They all make really great money. They scheduled everything. They were going to grab dinner before the game. I'm thinking burgers and beers. They made reservations for 14 at a high-end steakhouse. $15 cocktails, $10 beers, appetizers, the whole deal. We split the bill 14 ways. I can't afford it, but it is certainly not how I would drop a couple hundred on dinner. For me it would be part of a special night out. For them, it is just dinner. Extremely well-behaved young children. A friend still talks with awe of the time she was sat beside a low coffee table, eating and drinking from an antique set of china. Her hand trembled, such was her fear that she might drop or chip her cup. At that same table sat an immaculately behaved 3-year-old boy in a white shirt with a lace-edged collar. His mother didn't even look at him. She simply trusted that the nannies had sufficiently instructed him that he could navigate this china set without direction. His performance was faultless. There's 1. Inherently wealthy born into it. 2. Self-made wealthy kinda speaks for itself there. 3. New money people who get wealth and attempt to invest or use it wisely and pretend they've always had it. 4. Poor wealthy lottery winners etc. They buy ostentatious shit, big disgustingly built mansions, cars, bags, plastic surgery and anything tacky because they're clueless as to the value or consequence of what having money means and they're insecure and brag to everyone about it by way of showing off and spend it all. I have a pretty great golf group that goes on a yearly 5-day drinking vacation that includes golf. It has grown to 16 over the years. One of our guys has been in the group for 4 years. Everyone is generous and throws money around, so I never knew he was wealthy. We were on a rain delay and someone mentioned drunk ordering something dumb on Amazon. He mentioned that's how he got his new Bronco. He ordered it on our vacation and didn't remember. His wife was mad only because they had no more room for another vehicle. They don't spend money on status symbols, but are completely price insensitive with opportunities and education for their children. They teach their children how to play the game from a very young age. The children of wealthy parents are successful less because of direct inheritance and more because they have been groomed for success their entire lives. Spoiled rich kids who just get money from their parents tend to squander it within a generation or two. Intergenerational wealth takes a lot more effort. They always insist on picking up the bill every time and tip very well. My fiancé is from a rich family. When we started dating, he would always pick up the bill and cover whatever we did that day. I rarely paid for anything and I often offered, but he always turned me down. Most people I've dated before who were the same financial class as me took turns paying. Sometimes them, sometimes me. I thought at first he was flexing and the constant paying would stop, but it never did. They'll be wearing clothes and accessories most people won't even have heard of, but costs almost a house deposit. A Patek Philippe Nautilus, Vacheron Constantin Patrimony don't really stand out unless you're into watches. But they'll be north of 50, 100k. The leather jacket will be worth more than your car. Those boat shoes will be in the 4 digits. Just tailor-made high-quality stuff without shit like Balenciaga or Supreme all over it. I unknowingly at dinner with a billionaire couple. Afterward I was told about their wealth and I realized. Their clothes were bespoke. Everything fit like a glove. Their nails were perfectly manicured. The wife was not wearing normal jewelry. They insisted on picking up the bill. They tipped $100 on a $180 receipt. They were both legitimately nice people and I genuinely enjoyed dining with them. They're a poor grad student in the US but casually dropped details about their family and life pre-immigration that include maids, chauffeurs, and multiple kids being sent to the US for college at full tuition price. Also, I can't wear any jewelry except gold. Everyone in my family is allergic to cheap metal and at least $100 worth of saffron in the spice cabinet if they're Middle Eastern. They don't try to keep up with the Joneses and yet they're low-key confident about it. What I mean by that is they still hang out and are social and are good fun people, but you're the one with a huge mortgage and leased car and they just sort of don't worry about that shit. Then they go and quietly buy a vacation home but don't boast about it, they just have it to enjoy, not brag. Etc. etc. There's some sort of odd notion that rich people don't drive nice cars or have nice watches or do other things that make it obvious they are rich. Maybe that's true at some level, but once they're rich, they usually have several luxury exotic sports cars, live in mansions, wear luxury brands, fly private. And why wouldn't they? I've flown private a few times. It's absolutely phenomenal. Quietly comfortable about money. It's simply not a subject. Who picks up the tab? They don't care. Their minds simply don't go there. And if they somehow feel obliged to, then they simply do. There are no considerations going on in their minds, and with a keen eye you can see this in their attention, their mannerisms, their lack of certain stresses. It's subtle, but clear as day. My father is pretty wealthy but not absurdly. One thing I've noticed about him that kinda gives off that vibe without being too on the nose is the fact that he never looks at receipts bills in restaurants. He just gives them his card and tells them to run it for the whole table. He only actually looks at the bill after it's been paid and he's calculating a usually very generous tip. Was at my favorite lunch place in Munich. Guy is sitting there in an old jacket with dirty boots and a scruffy dog drinking coffee. Chat to him a bit, nice guy. After he leaves, the owner of the restaurant tells me he owns the 2 city blocks surrounding the restaurant. The only reason he didn't own the block we were in was because the church owned it and wasn't selling. Invalidating poor people issues or giving stupid and unrealistic financial life advice. Just start investing. Why don't you get a loan? Why don't you go back to school? Just take out another credit card. Don't you get free money from the government? Easiest way to know someone has always had money. They give terrible and out of touch advice to poor people. Not insanely wealthy. But my dad just stopped working 3 years ago after deciding he no longer wanted to be a CEO, and has been gardening since restoring his tractor. Whilst flying all over the world on holidays. Without a care in the world. It's the lack of doing stuff that gives money away. People who have money just can do nothing. The true only sure sign a person is wealthy is they take care of themselves, teeth, hair, clothing, things. stuff like that. Everything is fixed or taken care of in a timely manner. I know many wealthy people and that's basically the only running theme. They just have what they need and are taken care of and always all the time. They don't speak of money or wear it. The ones I know, they don't wear labeled clothes. The clothes they wear are notable by the quality. They also go to high-end estate sales and live frugally. Quiet types. Polite and humble, they go through life. They may have an expensive hobby but one would never know. Easier to tell if they're older. You don't notice the cosmetic work they've had done. If they both look surprisingly good for their age and are at a fit for their age and move easily. Old blue-collar workers carry the cost of earning a living and the damage it does to their bodies. Growing up, I delivered a set of newspapers to famous affluent people. As a 14-year-old through high school, I was around these individuals or at least interacting with them in some way. One takeaway was, I could tell who worked for their money versus those who deserved every little thing. They don't feel the need to buy expensive designer items with large logos plastered all over the product. This is especially the case if they're from old money. They're confident in how they don't just throw money around in an attempt to impress people. Maybe carelessness? I assisted a Grammy winner worth about $128 million. He would leave the doors to his apt and his Tesla open all the time in the arts district of Law. I lived next door as one of 3 assistants and was constantly checking doors. Lol. Financially comfortable, except with a hobby that functions as the day job. Or they seem to treat their day job more like a hobby. What you're actually seeing is that the bulk of the income is passive.